You ever think about how much you'd know if you could remember everything that you actually read? Because I do all the time. And not just books, but I'm talking podcasts, YouTube videos, Instagram posts, tweets, all of it. What if you could actually recall and remember and use this stuff when it mattered most? It's part of why I love reading in the first place. There's this hunger to get something out of the material. But I started realizing that knowledge isn't the problem. The retention or the retrieval is. Let's be honest, most of us forget what we read by the end of the day. An example of this is I read the Daily Stoic every morning, and by the next morning when I'm reading the next page, it's only 1 or 2 paragraphs. But it's incredibly challenging for me to recall exactly what yesterday's passage was about. And so I usually try to attempt doing that before I flip really quick and go, oh, right, that's what it was. And so things leave our orbit very quickly if there is not a system in place for capturing this stuff. That's the friction point. The default becomes forgetting. And when you don't have a way to remember what you read, you never really get to implement it. And if you don't get to implement what you read, it never really becomes ingrained and absorbed into your toolkit. The real shift for me was something that I discovered over a decade ago, but I hadn't quite implemented until the last couple months. And this is Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene's note card system. This is a process that they use to research each of their books. And for some reason, the word research maybe made it feel too serious, made it feel like it, wasn't going to apply to me. But until I kind of began to really fall back in love with analog, right? And capturing notes and writing on paper. And of course, I have a digital version of capturing many of these ideas too. But I really began to fall in love with this 3-part framework that I'm going to really quickly share with you. And by the way, you can adapt this to your needs the same way that Ryan Holiday adapted Robert Greene's to his needs. And he also encourages that for all of us as well, is make this note card system your own, make it make sense for you. Step 1 is the capture stage. This is actually happening during the reading. And so if I don't have a highlighter on me and I'm reading a physical book, I'll typically fold the corner, and that signals this is something to come back to, and there's something on this page that I need to highlight. Now, typically I do have a highlighter on me, and even if I am laying down or something, I'll sit up to kind of, highlight that section. And to me, that is the first stage of actually, okay, this is probably something that I want to turn into a note card. If I'm reading on Kindle, same process. I'll highlight first, and I will consider that highlight to be the first stage of capturing it. Step 2 is the catalog stage. This is something that, of course, ideally I wish I did every day, but it more so looks like every other day or every couple of days. But this is the stage where you revisit the books you've been reading or the material you had been highlighting, and you get to do another audit of, okay, which one of these is worth making it onto the note card? Robert Greene has said that a bad book might produce 3 note cards, a good one might produce 12. And so really what you're looking for are things that inspire you, things that strike you. It could be a quote, it could be a sentence, it could be an idea. And typically this is where I like to also on the note card put the attribution. So, okay, this is by, this book by this author, and sometimes even the date that I captured that note card, just because it's fun to revisit that sometimes. If I have time for listing a takeaway that I'm thinking about in that moment, an additional line, I'll go ahead and place that there too. Not only does this part feel incredibly therapeutic, but it actually works in a science-backed way. So in the book Make It Stick, which was published by Harvard's printing company, it's called The Science of Successful Learning. And basically one of the methods that it talks about is how retrieval is more important than repetition. And so this is why flashcards work really well when we were younger, using Quizlet and things like that, because it's a low stakes way of trying to guess the answer and trying to recall before you are given the answer. And so just that effort of trying to recall it is actually more effective for learning than just being given the answer. And so when you are able to recall and retrieve these ideas periodically, and of course spaced out over time, they are more likely to be absorbed. And so if you do this over time, what happens is you've got like 100 note cards, right? And every time you add a note card, it's one of those things, because it's physical, you can't help but see, one or two of the other note cards. Like, you're going to see something you wrote before, you might shuffle through it, sift through it, categorize them, organize them. And it's the kind of thing that, because it takes up physical space, it catches your eye a little bit more. And every glance at one of these ideas is a way to resurface and retrieve something that may have been lost. So even the act of going back into the book and choosing exactly what to copy makes it so that I'm engaging with the material. I'm not just reading it, I'm interacting with the information. Now, step 3 is the review stage. This is where I kind of mentioned it happens somewhat naturally, because while you're adding things to your pile, you will see certain things, but there's a more intentional way to do this, where periodically every couple days I'll pick up the stack and I'll kind of shuffle through some of the things and just resurface some of those ideas, like, oh right, I forgot I wrote that down. And often this is more effective when you are doing it while you're actually chasing a problem, where that finding that note card, finding that idea might actually be relevant. But the other note of doing it more casually and just kind of shuffling through and seeing what you stumble upon is a very fun way to do it too. I just find that I'm much more motivated to go through many of these cards when I'm trying to find an idea, that is related to a problem I'm solving. In the review stage, you can also add an additional takeaway that has come up for you in the moment, because chances are you're looking at it with fresh eyes, maybe days, months later, and you might have something additional you want to add to it. And so the act of actually now tweaking and correcting and adding something to enhance your understanding of that piece of material can go a very long way. So one, there's the act of handwriting in that reviewing process that helps with the learning, but also just naturally the associations and connections that begin to form when you are looking at all of this stuff side by side, back to back. It gives you opportunities for ideas and connections that just wouldn't have been there before. And I think what was most encouraging to me about this part of the process was that authors like Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene do this. They do not start actually writing chapters of their book until they have enough note cards. And there's this intuitive sense of like, oh, I know when I have enough cards that it's ready to, like, the materials here, the books here, I just need to now put it together. And so having this sense of just growing and adding to this notebook of things you've learned over your life is a very cool way to look at this system. You don't have to be writing your own book in order for this to be worth it. If you just care about retaining information and learning what you read, it's pretty cool to be able to go back to maybe 12 note cards and download yourself on some of the main takeaways that you had from a book you read 10 years ago. Now I know what you're thinking. What about digital? And the truth is that I use digital tools too. For example, my Notes app is where I capture tons of ideas rather than maybe a note card when they first come. And a lot of times those ideas end up going from my Notes app onto the note card. But in many cases, I like to go the other way around too. So for example, I like to digitize my note cards from time to time. This is something I don't do nearly as often. It's more of like a weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly process sometimes. But the way that I'll do this is, instead of typing everything all over into maybe my Notion database, I'll just simply take a picture of the note card and put it into the Notion database. And so it's kind of a picture version of what I wrote, and it feels like I still get to do the handwriting and, take advantage of that, but I'm not missing out on, the lack of cataloging that can sometimes come from ideas getting lost in journals and note cards and things like that. Now, for my Kindle highlights, I've been using something called Readwise. Now, Readwise basically takes all of your Kindle highlights and organizes them into one library, so that just like having 12 note cards from a book, I could skim all 12 highlights in this one Readwise portal. Now, another thing it does that's really nice is it sends you a daily email where you can review some of these highlights in a way that I was mentioning that you would do naturally when you're messing around with physical cards. Now, the real benefit isn't just the Readwise part, it's their additional reader app that you get access to with the subscription, which is basically a way that I can take YouTube videos that I want to watch. So let's say it's an hour-long podcast that's on YouTube, but I don't have the time to watch it. I want to quickly skim through it, or I want to kind of make sure to highlight certain ideas from it. Traditionally, that would be hard, right? You'd have to stop the video. You'd have to type out, exactly what you just heard in the Notes app. That's something I would do. But what you can do is copy and paste the link into Reader of the video, and within seconds, the full transcript will be available, and you can skim through this thing probably much quicker than you would actually be watching it. But more importantly, you can highlight ideas in these YouTube videos the same way that you would in a book. And of course, they've expanded this to like tweet posts and things like that. And of course, other articles. Newsletters are another area where I always feel like, oh, this is so good. I wish I could resurface this, but it gets lost in your inbox. And so instead of just putting it into another folder, sending and forwarding that email newsletter to my Reader or Readwise app is a great way for me to have all this material in one place. So it's a combination of these note cards that I find very, very useful and effective. Yes, of course, it's slower, but it does go a long way when it comes to retrieval, retention, and absorption. And then of course, the digital version is more convenient. It's more fun in some ways. And if you find yourself leaning more on the digital side, looking at something like Reader and Readwise might be worth it for you too. This system works because it's simple, and I encourage you to adapt it to your needs the same way that I have done for mine. And the only way to do that is by trying it a number of different ways. And through that process, you will find these deviations where you're like, oh, I like doing this a little bit that way, and this one feels better this way. And that's where you can begin to form what feels like your own system. So I hope this gave you a useful starting point for doing so. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe wherever you're at. And of course, sign up for the Habit Chest newsletter in the description below. I appreciate you hanging out, taking the time, and I will see you on the next one.